Hello, everyone. My name is Darby Jones from EF Explore America, and I have the pleasure of overseeing our educational partnerships from around the country. I want to welcome all of you, teachers and students and EF staff members from around the country and around the world, to this truly unique and special opportunity to hear from two survivors of the attacks on September 11th, 2001, exactly 20 years ago tomorrow. This is only possible through an incredible partnership we have with the 9/11 Tribute Museum that has already afforded thousands of students who are traveling with EF to meet survivors and first responders on their educational trips while visiting New York and be profoundly impacted by their powerful stories of survival. I want to soon turn this over to my friend, Kweku Farrar, who is amazing to work with and serves as the Tribute Museum's volunteer program and outreach manager. He will give a bit more insight into the 9/11 Tribute Museum itself and introduce our guests, Kathy and Gordon. We are so grateful and honored they are here with us today to courageously share their stories. If you haven't already done so, please switch from gallery view to speaker view. And we would love, if you have any questions at all, to type them into the chat or into the Q&A, and we will try to get to all of them at the end, time permitting. My wonderful colleague, Sarah Shaban, will monitor that chat and facilitate the latter portion of today's program. So with that said, welcome Kweku and guests, and over to you.
Thank you, Darby. And hello, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon, morning, or evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. As Darby noted, my name is Kweku Farrar, and I am staff here at the 9/11 Tribute Museum. So the 9/11 Tribute Museum, not to be confused with the 9/11 Memorial Museum, is actually the first 9/11 museum created by the September 11 Families Association in 2006. And Tribute was created to share the personal stories of people who were personally impacted by 9/11. So these groups include survivors, family members who lost loved ones on that day or since, recovery workers, first responders, as well as residents who were displaced by the attacks. Today, you're going to be hearing two personal stories from two of our cherished volunteers, Catherine Langford, who was a Lower Manhattan resident at the time of 9/11 and also a survivor, as well as Gordon Huie, who is a survivor, a family member, as well as a medical first responder. So as this is the eve of the 20th anniversary of 9/11, we thank you all for tuning in. And for your attention, and I will turn the mic over to Gordon to begin. Gordon.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As you can tell by my facial features, I'm Chinese American. I was born very close to Chinatown, and you can see on this picture here, Chinatown is very close by the World Trade Center. Now, I do orthopedic surgery, and I love doing research. One of my offices was on 35th and Park Avenue. So while over there, I was trying to get down to Lower Manhattan to get to Beekman Hospital. My paper, I can go throughout the whole country, interview the patients there. I get the Western perspective, but to make the paper legitimate, I have to also get the Eastern perspective. So going down to Beekman Hospital, that is so close to Chinatown, has a huge Chinese population. So I was there to interview 4 of their patients there. As I'm heading toward Beekman, I look up and I see the towers on fire. I didn't see the planes hit, but I got to see the towers ablaze. My background is I'm a former combat medic in the US Army. And many years later, after I graduated from medicine, I went into the Air Force as a medical officer. But you don't really need a military background to realize when you have 2 buildings struck by 2 planes at the same time, you realize our country is under attack. So instead of heading to Beekman, I decided to go to the World Trade Center. As I got to the base of Tower 2 came exploding down. And in this photo here, you'll actually see Tower 2. This is Tower 1. Okay. I say the term it was exploding as it was coming down because the World Trade Center, they're 110 stories off the ground. Tower 2 came down between 10 to 12 seconds. And if you can picture what a grenade is, when it got to the bottom, it exploded out sideways. Destroyed many buildings. It wasn't just 2 buildings that were destroyed that day. I believe 13 to 15 buildings were destroyed within seconds that day. When it's all said and done, somewhere in this dust is me. And I'm pretty sure you've seen a lot of pictures of the dust. Now, by the grace of God, because I was born and raised in Chinatown, I was able to make out some streets and landmarks when the dust settled a little bit. That was important because that guided me to Beekman Hospital. I didn't go to Beekman Hospital because I needed help. I went to Beekman Hospital because as an orthopedic surgeon, I really don't have any of the skills, but I had hoped to get into the operating room. I identified who I was. They don't know me from Adam. Their operating room was already going full blast because they had surgeons that were operating on victims. But they gave me the fourth floor conference room because they needed all the medical personnel as possible for that day. They gave me the fourth floor conference room. Conference rooms, it's a very large room, has one huge conference room table. It's they're really very quiet because there's only two people in the room. There's one patient and myself, no nurse, no technician, no janitor, no one. It's just the two of us. Now, New York City is a modern metropolis. Modern cities have modern medical centers. But it was so surreal because on that hard conference room table with no sheet or mattress, I started to sew people back together again. I'm used to wearing scrubs, surgical gowns, sterile from head to toe. And here I was there for a business meeting that morning. I was in a shirt and jacket, tie. I took my jacket off, still had my shirt and tie on, didn't even have a mask on, and I'm leaning over a patient, just sewing that patient back together. By lunchtime, they weren't sending any patients to me. I just assumed because of our proximity to ground zero that we were saturated, that they were diverting ambulances to outer boroughs. It didn't dawn upon me they weren't sending patients to me. It was because there was just no more survivors. That afternoon, I was thirsty. There's no food or water in the cafeteria. The cafeteria's been converted into a trauma bay. The only thing I could do is try to get to Chinatown. Now, prior to 2001, I had moved to New Jersey, but I kept coming down to Chinatown every single Sunday to go to church. And I knew that if I can get to that church, I can get some water. Now, the church I attend down there is a very old church. They have something well called landlines. We used to be able to plug a wire into a wall, and we used to be able to talk on the phone through landlines. Well, my dad, he resides in New Jersey. Dad doesn't really know how to use a cell phone, but he does have a landline. And he knew that of all the places in all the city of New York, there's only one logical place that I would actually seek refuge, and that would be at the church down in Chinatown. Now, because Dad had a landline, the church had a landline, at 8:20 that evening, Dad was able to get through to inform me that Susan was in the World Trade Center. Susan's my sister. She didn't work in the World Trade Center. She was there for a 2-day meeting, of which the second day never came, obviously. Susan was up in this place. It's called Windows on the World. They occupied the 106th and 107th floor of Tower 1. Susan worked for a company that went out of business in 2013. It's called Compact Computer. It used to be a very large computer company. Up at Windows on the World was a huge computer meeting. Many computer companies were up there. Compact sent in a 5-man delegation to the meeting. One of the guys who was on Susan's team and the Compact team, he didn't have a matching shirt and tie. And this is a very powerful breakfast meeting. So he went to his room in the Marriott Hotel to get a new shirt to match his tie. When he was at the bottom, that's when Tower 1 was struck. He wasn't able to go up, but what he was able to do was contact Houston, Texas, which is the corporate headquarters for Compact. They in turn looked up the next of kin, which was Dad. And of course, Dad got a hold of me that night. As you pretty much figured out who I am, I'm what we call the triple. I believe I'm the only triple in the recorded history of New York City. I'm a survivor. I'm a family member. I'm also a rescue worker in one. So my plate's kind of full, if you know what I mean. In the years after the bombing, many colleges and universities invite me to be the keynote speaker at their commencement exercises. What I notice when I speak at these graduations, I decompress from that really, really full plate. In September 2018, Kwaku, and we were able to communicate, and he asked if I would come in and be a volunteer here at the Tribute Museum. What I noticed when I speak in front of 2 people, or if I speak in front of a graduation of 10,000 people, I decompress the same amount. And for that, I'm very, very grateful. I continue to do this. I don't do surgery anymore. And I continue in my semi-retirement to keep coming to the Tribute Museum because there's so much that we can share with the world that it's not on paper and you don't learn about this in school. So I feel it's very important. And that's why I'm here at 9/11 Tribute Museum doing all these talks. And that's pretty much my talk. Okay.
Kathy?
Hi, I'm Kathy. Thanks, Gordon. I hadn't heard your story. That's That's amazing. Okay, so my name is Catherine Langford. I was a resident of Lower Manhattan on 9/11, and I like to tell my story. It's kind of a version of the American dream, right? I grew up in McLean, Virginia, which was outside of DC, and after college, I got a job in DC. And there I met a lovely man who was from Australia. He was on a 2-year work assignment. So we dated, fell in love. I went to Australia for a year, and then we ultimately got engaged, but we were like, where are we gonna live? Do we live in Australia? Do we live in DC? And he ended up, his name was Guy, he ended up getting a job in Manhattan. We thought, this is awesome. We were both in finance, and this was sort of, would be the pinnacle of our career to get to New York. And again, it's sort of that American dream story because our dads weren't bankers. We just went to college, worked really hard, and got into the finance industry. I took a job at Deutsche Bank, which is at 130 Liberty Street, just south of the towers. And Guy was at Deloitte, which is at the World Financial Center, sort of to the left of the towers, if you were below them. And we loved it. And when we moved to the city, we thought we'd heard of like, right, the Upper West Side, the Upper East Side, where a lot of people live. But we thought, why? That's actually really far away from our jobs. It's like 40 minutes on the subway. So we thought we're going to live in Lower Manhattan, which was kind of not odd, but just not a lot of people did. But we thought the area was beautiful, surrounded by water. We love the South Street Seaport, and it was close to like Soho and Tribeca, so that was cool. And we love the history of it, you know, Trinity Church and Wall Street. So there we were. We got in a very tiny apartment when we first moved there. It was a studio apartment, and if you don't know what a studio apartment is, it's like your living room is your bedroom. It's kind of just one room. So we stayed in that studio apartment for like 3 years while we were saving money. We had one window, and so after 3 years of saving our money, working hard, we thought, let's go to the big time. Let's get a 2-bedroom apartment. So we found this great apartment, and it was like a converted office building that they converted into what they called luxury apartments, and we loved it. It was on the 17th floor, and we had 15th floor, and we had 17 windows. We went from one window to 17 because the apartment sort of jutted out like a U shape, and we were on the edge of it. And what we loved was this amazing view of the World Trade Center, right? We weren't really New Yorkers. We had a lot of friends and family who'd come and visit. So it was such a great, easy like landmark to take people to. Everybody wanted to go to the top of the World Trade Center. The World Trade Center was a cool neighborhood. Underneath the towers were like a little shopping mall, which we would go to. And at the top, like Gordon referred to, there was a fancy restaurant, but I think in the other tower, I'm not sure if it was next to that restaurant, was a bar called the Greatest Bar on Earth. And we used to take our friends there. You just got in this express elevator and up you went. And then you saw these amazing views of the city. It was a neighborhood we absolutely loved. And our time sort of working on Wall Street, we loved too. It wasn't like the movies, The Wolf of Wall Street. We were with, you know, working with really smart people, and it was a great time like in my career. So on September 11th, we actually weren't at work. We were in our apartment, and I remember I was in the kitchen. I had made some toast, and I had a plate in my hand, and I put some butter on it, and I was kind of waiting for it to melt, kind of just standing there when the first plane struck the tower. And I thought a bomb had gone off in the bottom of our building because the impact was so severe. So I yelled out to a guy who was home as well, who wasn't at work. I said, a bomb. I said, a bomb just went off in our building. But then we looked out the window and we saw it wasn't our building. It was the North Tower had been hit. So this is a really, really early picture. It looks like it's reversed. But this is my office building right here. And this is couldn't be more than a minute or two after the impact. The smoke is just kind of white. And I can tell you immediately it was bad. There was glass, debris, and you probably can't see this, but things on fire on the sidewalk. There were people falling out of the buildings. The news said it was a small plane, maybe a small commuter plane, and we thought, no, like it was such a big hole. It was such a gaping hole, and it was right in the middle of the building. We thought this had to be intentional. Didn't have too much time to think. I called my mom on one of those landlines, and she wasn't home. And I remember thinking, why isn't she home? It's so early in the morning. And I left a message on her answer machine. And I said, Mom, I said, a plane just hit the World Trade Center. I said, there are bodies everywhere. And I said, I think I'm in labor and I don't know what to do. I was pregnant with my first child. I wasn't due until September 24th, that I had gone into labor, you know, a couple weeks early. And I remember waking up that day thinking, wow, it's so gorgeous. It was such a beautiful day. It's a day like today on the East Coast, blue skies. And I remember thinking, well, we won't go to work. This is like, we're going to have a baby today. This should be, you know, a great day. Pretty quickly, we realized it wasn't going to be a great day. We heard the sound of jet engines way too loud, way too close. And the second plane hit the South Tower. And at that point, I think my mind and my body just went eerily still. And I remember Guy said, he said, get dressed, we're getting out of here. And I said, okay. I hadn't packed a bag or anything for the hospital because I thought, oh, first babies are always late. I'm not due. I was a queer woman. I was working. So we threw some clothes, a towel, our book from our birthing class, you know, in a backpack. And we went down to the lobby of our building. There, Guy said, you know, hey, we need to leave. We need to get out of here. And I thought, no, we can't leave because we saw so much stuff coming out of the towers. And I thought, how are we going to get north around these two burning buildings now with things just falling out of it? So I mean, something will hit us in the head. So I felt safer just to stay in the lobby. Now, a lot of people didn't really know what was going on. People were sort of gathering there because they didn't want to leave either. And as we were waiting there, sort of in the lobby, not really knowing what to do, I remember seeing police just running by on Washington Street, heading towards the tower. And then all of a sudden, you heard and felt this horrible, I think it would be like what an avalanche sounds like. And I thought, okay, that's it. I thought our building had been struck by a missile or something and was collapsing on itself. The lights went off. I remember Guy sort of put his hands over me to kind of, you know, protect me. We were waiting for some kind of impact, just like to hit you. The lights flickered on, but they came back on again. And then as so the lights came back on, just this smoky ash started filling the lobby. And then people started coming into the lobby covered in this white ash. And we didn't know what had happened. We didn't know the tower, the South Tower had fallen. I thought maybe the top had burned off, because never in my imagination could I think that the towers would collapse. This was before we left, both buildings on fire. And you can see how the smoke went from kind of that ash to like jet black. So people came in and, you know, were saying my brother was in there, this and that. And again, we don't really know what happened, but someone said, you need to leave. Like, everybody needs to evacuate this building. We're not sure if it's safe anymore. So our apartment building had two entrances, one on Washington Street and one on West Street, which we would call the West Side Highway, which is normally a very busy highway. When we walked out, I remember it was covered in ash and just eerily quiet. And when we got out on the road, someone just yelled, don't look back, just run south. And all of a sudden you heard that avalanche sound again. So we ran south. We hid in like a parking garage until a police officer who happened to be there too, sort of waved us over to come to her. And there she told us there was an apartment that we could go into and people were kind of gathering there. So we took shelter in this apartment. People were there, interesting too, with their dogs. Like, they didn't want to leave their animals, so they had dogs, and we were just sort of this random group of people. The TV was on. So at that point, we were able to see both towers come down. And I just thought, how is this happening, you know, in my backyard in New York City, in America? It was just too much to comprehend. And then they said a plane hit the Pentagon. And I thought, oh my God, you know, Pentagon's in Virginia, that's where my family is, but more, that's the head of our defense. So I just, you know, you had that feeling, like as Gordon said, we're under attack and this is really serious. Eventually an ambulance came and they said, we're here for the pregnant woman. I put my hand up and I said, that's me. Ambulance came and took us through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. I remember it being filled with smoke and I was so nervous that, you know, we just didn't know were these attacks over? Was this it? Were they going to blow up bridges and the tunnels? Eventually, I got to Beth Israel Hospital, where they examined me and they said, you know, Mrs. Langford, the baby is doing great. You'll definitely deliver today. The baby's not in distress. If you want, you can stay here, or you can return. You could go to New Jersey or Staten Island because they're evacuating Lower Manhattan. And I thought to myself, I'm in distress. And then I also thought, sorry, Gordon, but I was like, I don't want to have this baby in New Jersey. So we ended up leaving Beth Israel, and we started walking, and we walked up to the hospital I was supposed to deliver at, which was NYU Tisch. And the good news is at 2 a.m. on September 12th, I delivered Grace Madison. Here's a little picture. 20 years ago. This is Grace now. She's 20. She'll be 20 on Sunday. She's affectionate. She's kind. She's really a special spirit. I feel like she's everything those terrorists were not. We never returned to live in our apartment. We did go back where old guy went back about whenever he was allowed to. I feel like about 2 weeks later to get passports, wallets, things like that. And this was a while. I think this was 6 months after the debris field. I remember too leaving the hospital a couple of days later. My parents came up, and we ended up going back to Virginia to live a little bit. Lower Manhattan was toxic. I mean, I remember they said, oh, the air is fine. You knew it wasn't fine. But walking out of the hospital with, you know, our new daughter, I remember all the flyers and pictures of people that were missing, you know, last seen at Windows on the World, last seen at whatever floor of the world. And it was just, it was such a heartache. It still is. But I appreciate you all listening and taking time to hear our story.
Wow, thank you both. What incredible stories. It's amazing. Every time we hear stories from survivors, what makes it special is they're all so different and so unique, but the perspective is just, it gives it such life to the experience of that day. So thank you so much for sharing. I encourage anyone who has questions that they haven't asked yet to put them in the chat, and I'll try to get to them in the next couple of minutes. We do have a couple of questions from the group already that I would love to ask you guys. I think I want to start with you, Gordon. I was wondering when you know, so many people are running away from this event, and you went back and you went to help people, and, you know, were you scared doing that? What compelled you to kind of dive in instead of, you know, seeking safety like everyone else?
I don't know. I just knew that I had to do something. I was very much afraid. When the towers were hit, I was angry because they attacked my country and was hurting my people. But that was replaced pretty quickly once the Tower 2 came down. I was so scared. I cried. I actually cried like a baby. Not ashamed to say it. But when I finally got my act together, I then went to Beekman Hospital, and that's when I identified myself, and I said, let me help.
Sarah, you're muted.
Muted.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. So thank you for your answer there. And I want another question actually for both of you. This is such a huge event in both of your lives, and in so many different ways, changed a lot of your lives. And even though we're at the 20th anniversary, it was 20 years ago, how do you feel like even now you live your life differently after having gone through, you know, those events?
Kathy?
It's taken a long time. I mean, the world really changed in terms of like even flying. Like flying used to be fun, right? And you just you just develop this new fear, this new mistrust of people. I remember just even trying to go back to work after seeing anybody with a backpack. I thought, are they going to blow up the subway? It was sad because, you know, it wasn't kind of the world I grew up in. A lot of fear and anxiety. But eventually, you know, when I found Tribute and they helped me tell my story, and I learned from so many other docents like Gordon, it ended up being a, what's the word, transformative, or saw so much resilience and joy in people after the worst of the worst. It's uplifting, and I think it's helping me live a more joyful life, knowing that you can get through and recover from these things.
For me, as we know, at Ground Zero, we lost 2,749 people that morning. After 9/11, 2001, we lost over 3,000 more people. We actually lose about 4 people per week. And are we going to lose more? Yes, we are guaranteed to lose more. I say that with great confidence because I'm one of the statistics. I've got multiple cancers growing in me. I've gone through 5 surgical procedures in the last 2 years, and the bottom line is that I cannot get cancers. I'm okay with it because I know where I'm going after this life. But I still deal with my cancer treatments every day. I do, well, half my insides are missing, so I have to do a whole lot of dressing changes every day. So has this impacted my life? Yes, it has definitely impacted my life on a very large scale. Yeah, it also resulted in me getting a divorce also. So it's been pretty hard. It's been pretty hard.
Yeah, me too. It changes you, some things you can't recover from, or if you couldn't share with your partner at the time, you felt alone. Yeah, so I have the same experience, Gordon, which is a sadness too.
Thank you both for sharing. Someone else would like to know, in the group asked, when you go back and see the memorial towers, what goes through your minds?
Kathy?
Thanks, Gordon. I love the memorial. I think they're so well done. I think the water falling is symbolic for so much that was falling. I love the names being vacant. My biggest thought though is I really think it's so beautiful down there now with the new World Trade Center, and like the PATH station is so fancy and nice. Like I literally think you can't believe that actually happened there. You can't believe that there were actually 2 towers. It looks like a bad movie, that they actually fell like they did, and it just seems like it's so pretty there now that you know, that did that really happen? I can't. It's just too much to digest.
As for me, I find there's profound sadness, but there's equal joy. I feel bad that when people come down to the memorial, because as Kathy mentioned, it's so beautiful, it's so serene, it's such a beautiful place, that they would lose sight of what actually happened here 20 years ago, because you don't see the destruction. You really don't, except for the Greek Orthodox Church, which is still being reconstructed. So that's my sadness, is that unless they hear our stories are never written down anywhere. And looking around the memorial, you cannot even see that we were ever attacked.
Yeah, it is crazy how different it is down there. It's just completely changed. It's crazy. But there are a lot more questions, so I feel probably not getting to all of them live, but we can get you guys those questions after. Gordon, I know that you do have to wrap up. What I will say, and if we want to just leave it on a message maybe there's a lot of students on the call and educators, and I'm curious, as parting thoughts, what you guys think is the most important thing to remember, take away, or learn from these events as a young person, you know, in our country and in our society.
Gordon, why don't you go first, because I know you have to dash.
I find that, I guess if there's one thing I can say is that tomorrows are never promised, and to live each day as if everything else does not matter anymore. That's what I think of these days.
I think I would tell people to love this country. Like I loved like how, again, we weren't New Yorkers, but New York loved us. Like we were so happy down there, and had so many opportunities in a career. And then I would just say, looking back on my experience, what you can take away is being more compassionate to people and reaching out. We think about, you know, leaders or heroes as being of all those firefighters who went in to help people, or someone like Gordon who was sewing people up. And sometimes you might think to yourself, well, that's never going to be me. Like, I can't do that. But you actually can, you know, in the lunchroom, if someone's sitting by themselves, you can be a leader and reach out to someone and be compassionate in your actions and your words with people. Will make this world a better place.
Thank you so much. Such a powerful message. And thank you both so much for sharing not just your experiences, but so much about how it's affected you personally and in your lives. It's really something that we're grateful to have the opportunity to hear and learn from. So thank you for being here. And Darby, anything to add before we wrap up?
Sure, just the biggest thank you to Kathy and Gordon and Kweku. You have helped make this commemoration come alive for all of us, and have really given a voice to those who just no longer have one. Thank you to everyone at home and in classrooms around the country for joining. A survey will pop up at the end of the presentation, so please just take a moment to give us your feedback. Thank all of you with all of our hearts, and have a nice weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you, Darby. Thanks, Chefs.